What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hoopers Lounge. Today have a kind of a shorter episode, but one that we've been wanting to do for a couple weeks now. We are going to get into our top 10 lists of all time bucket getters. Somebody with the game tied with 5 seconds left. Who do you want to go one on one and win you that game? So we are going to get into those lists at the end of the episode. But first, we're just going to go over some news from the last couple of days in the NBA, and we'll kick it over to Alex to start with that.
All right. We're in the middle of the All-Star break now. This began today, so there's not going to be any games until next Thursday. So, there's not too much to talk about in terms of gameplay around the NBA. But in the three games that we had yesterday, on the last day of games before the All-Star break, we've had some interesting developments. The Warriors-Jazz game, Klay Thompson came off the bench for the first time since his rookie season. After really being a shell of his former self for most of the year, it immediately contributed with 35 points and 7 three-pointers in the Warriors' three-point win over the Jazz. What are your takeaways from Klay's production off the bench? Do you think this is something that Steve Kerr should keep the rest of the year, that Klay can sustain?
I definitely think it's something that Steve Kerr should keep until it doesn't work. I don't know if Klay can sustain 30 points a night off the bench. I think that's unrealistic of us fans to think of that. However, I was watching the second half of the game last night, and he just looked like he took a deep breath. He came off the bench. He was able to see what was happening, and I think we have pieces that can start with Steph and Draymond now, where Klay isn't necessarily needed to score the basketball a ton, but the bench unit needs some scoring. So I think that definitely helps Klay because he can take shots with Steph and Wiggins and Kuminga and all those guys on the bench. He can take those shots. And last night he made a lot of them. I'm really happy for him because the media has been coming after him, and rightfully so for the most part. He hasn't played great this season, but for him to bounce back after being benched shows a lot of maturity and shows that he's a winner still, even if his shots aren't falling like they used to.
Yeah, Klay Thompson's obviously had his struggles both on and off the court. On the court, he's been a shell, and off the court, him not being able to play up to the player he thinks he is affecting his mental. So it is good to see him bounce back with the great performance off the bench, looking like his old self, nailing 7 threes. And the Warriors needed it too on a night where everyone else on the team more or less struggled. Curry only had 16 points, 4 of 14 from the field, and the Warriors did everything in their power at the end of the game to give this away. Kuminga took on a 4-on-1 in transition and turned the ball over instead of kicking it out to, two of the Splash Brothers or Draymond Green. He decided to go in and turned it over. That followed up with John Collins throwing a ball into the 7th row in the Jazz's second to last play of the game.
That was awesome.
The final play of the game, with the Jazz having an opportunity to tie it, to get a wide open 3-point corner shot because Brandon Podjemski got bitched on that punk. Fortunately for the Warriors, who was it that missed it? Was it Sexton?
Yeah, it was Sexton.
That had the last shot? Yeah, Sexton missed the shot. Warriors just gave the win, but yeah, these are performances and mistakes that they can definitely not afford in the playoffs.
Well, they got to make the playoffs first. Right now, they're the 10th seed in the West, which would mean they need to win 2 games just to get the 8th seed and play.
2 games on the road.
To play as the 8th seed. So the Warriors have a lot of work cut out for them after the All-Star break, but they won 5 of the last 6 games, and they're looking good. Klay off the bench might be the secret to the Warriors' success the rest of the way, and I'm interested to see how long Steve Kerr sticks with this strategy.
Cut over to one of the other big games from yesterday, the Bucks versus the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies were allowed a starting 5 of Zaire Williams, Vince Williams Jr., Santi Aldama, Trey Jamison, and Jay Goodwin, who I've never heard of in my life, so he's going to be called Jay. Despite this G League as starting 5, they went out and defeated the Milwaukee Bucks.
So
Who
sad.
were fully healthy, aside from Chris Middleton. Final score of 113 to 110. G.G. Jackson was the leading scorer for the Grizzlies with 27 off the bench. He's been a great find for this Grizzlies team, second-round pick out of South Carolina. But I think this is more of a knock on the Bucks than it is reward for the Grizzlies per se. The Bucks have Giannis and Dame. Those two in and of itself should have been enough to beat this depleted Grizzlies roster that has been massacred by injuries. The fact that they didn't is a huge knock on Doc Rivers, who has started his Bucks career 3-8. Definitely not the record that fans were expecting to see when they fired Griffin and hired Rivers. Where did the Bucks go from here? What improvements can they make? Because the team that we saw yesterday is a team that looks more likely to get eliminated in the first round and to go and win a championship.
Well, the first thing I want to say is yes, they have Giannis and Dame. However, I felt like defense was their biggest problem last night and not offense. When you roll out Giannis and Brook Lopez, and Malik Beasley's an all right defender, Jay Crowder's okay, Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton and Patrick Beverly, who they just traded for, are all like above average defenders off the bench. When you roll that lineup against the lineup you just read, giving up 113 points is criminal. It's terrible. 110 points should have won you this game, as far as I'm concerned. And it's their defense that needs to improve the most, because the shots are going to fall and their offense is going to figure itself out. They have too much talent, in my opinion, to not score points. But they need to lock in defensively and not allow these games to slip away from them, because it just seemed like they weren't taking Memphis seriously and they could just never catch up.
I actually disagree with you on that take. In this day and age, 113 points is a new 93. Teams are scoring more than ever just because of the spacing around the court. We saw G.G. Jackson nail, I think it was 6 threes. I'm checking the box score. Yeah, 6 out of 10 from threes. 5 of them are open just because of the spacing that drives create. Teams are going to get their open threes, and teams are going to make their open threes. 110 points is really not an awful defensive effort, regardless of who's playing on the court. If you're in the NBA, you're going to be capable of making wide open threes, and the Grizzlies showed that yesterday. What I think the issue was more of the offense. Giannis finished the game with 35 points on 12 assists on 15 of 17 shooting. That is absurd numbers. Absurd shooting percentage. And if it wasn't for that superhuman effort, the Bucks would have lost by 20. You look at Dame's stats: 7 of 21 from the field. Brook Lopez, 5 of 14. Malik Beasley, 3 of 10 from three-point range. This inefficient shooting and the ability to generate offense and get the ball in the bucket is what's costing teams games now. I don't think 113 points given up is a bad defensive effort. I think that's the one thing that's improved since Doc Rivers became the coach. But our offense has looked like a shell of its former self. Dame has looked like a shell of his former self. Middleton has not been healthy enough to play in a lot of the games, and the Bucks offense has suffered because of it.
I hear where you're coming from, for sure. The Bucks offense hasn't been great either. However, my only argument to that is you're playing the Memphis Grizzlies. Like you said, it's a G League type roster. This team should not score more than probably like 105 points on you, in my opinion. If this were, the Phoenix Suns with Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker, and you give up 113, that's a win. But you're playing the Memphis Grizzlies, who quite literally are rolling out a starting five where not one of their starters from night one are starting now. Like, that's the type of roster they're rolling out. So I feel like Milwaukee should take pride in itself to say, we are better than these guys. We are not going to let them score. I understand all the spacing and the scoring, but these guys don't play they're playing down to their competition is what I'm trying to say, and I feel like that is a lack of effort on defense. Because if they play Memphis 10 games, I bet Milwaukee wins 9 out of 10 games. And last night was the one game they lose because they weren't locked in defensively, because they weren't taking this team seriously. That, to me, is a concern. The shooting, like I said, will find itself later in the season come playoff time because they have too much talent. That's just my opinion, though.
The shooting hasn't found itself, though. Like, we're at the All-Star break. We're basically 3/4 of the way through the regular season. The shooting needs to find itself very soon. At this point, teams are beginning to realize who they are and who they aren't. And Milwaukee does not appear to be an offensive juggernaut despite the addition of Dame. At this point, it's too late in the season for teams to just change their identity and become an offensive powerhouse after struggling most of the season. Maybe shooting is a weakness for the Bucks until maybe Middleton getting healthy will change that. But talking about the Grizzlies, I'm looking at G.G. Jackson's last 5 games. He put up 27, 20, 16, 27, and 16 points. This is a player who's shown an ability to get buckets in the NBA. I don't think the defense was the issue against the Memphis Grizzlies. I think it's our ability to put the ball in the bucket. We should not be scoring only 110 points with two superstar, borderline MVP players, 110 points against a G League team is not enough. It won't be enough against the Celtics. It won't be enough against the Sixers, the Cavs, the Knicks, and it definitely wasn't enough against the Grizzlies last night.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree because again, it's all about the physicality you put on the court is one thing, but it's the mental approach to the game that is a totally different thing. And that's all from my experience playing basketball, that's all on the defensive side. Because these guys like Dame's going to jack up shots whether they're going in or not. And most nights they're going to go in. That's just who I know Dame is. And in a 7-game series, I expect these guys, these caliber of players who have won a championship before, most of them, to adjust to what the other team is doing. And that is something that they're just not doing defensively. Like Zaire Williams had 27 points. For what reason? Vince Williams had 18 points and 12 rebounds. For what reason? Like, Gigi Jackson is good, don't get me wrong, and Zaire Williams is good. But, like, they're scoring on Giannis and Brook Lopez for the most part in the paint. Like, that's who's locking down the paint. And so you shouldn't be giving up 113 points to this team when you're a championship contender. You just shouldn't. It's just bad. It's just really bad. I'm pretty sure Memphis just played Charlotte the other night, I think. And Charlotte beat them the other night, giving up 106 points. You're telling me the Charlotte Hornets guarded this team better than the Milwaukee Bucks? That's flat out embarrassing on national television to give up more points against Charlotte.
How much did Charlotte score?
115. So 5 more points than Milwaukee, but they gave up 7 less. That game was in Charlotte, so it was on the road instead of in Memphis. But the talent gap between Charlotte and Milwaukee, I think, makes up for that. So, yeah, it's a bad loss all around. I think no matter which way you slice it, it's a bad loss.
Before we move on, here's a fun fact. Since the start of 2024, Giannis has shot better from three-point range than Dame has.
Well, that's just sad. That's just sad.
It's also a fact. Dame's not living up to expectations this year. But let's move on. We got the All-Star break ahead of us this weekend, and we got some predictions for the dunk contest, the three-point contest.
Yeah. So, let's start with the dunk contest.
I feel like it's a fairly obvious choice. I don't even think there has to be much.
All right. So,
explained.
I think I know who you're talking about, and that's Mac McClung. I'm guessing.
It is Mac McClung.
All right. So,
if you don't, you're gonna tell me you're betting on someone else other than Mac McClung to win the contest.
I think there's a sleeper, and his name is Jacob Toppin. If Jacob Toppin is creative with his dunks, I think he has the athletic edge over everybody else in this contest. But he needs to be creative with what he does, because that's what wins you dunk contests. Either if you're short or you're creative, that will win you the dunk contest. Those are the two things. So
McClung is one of the most creative dunkers, though. The only reason he's even on a G League team is because of his viral dunk mixtape from high school. I mean, if you've been following any sort of basketball, you know the name Mac McClung because his overtime reels were absolutely viral. He is a dunker. That's his archetype. That's who he is.
Oh, no question, he's the favorite.
Jacob Toppin. The only thing I know of him is that he's Obi Toppin's brother. Yes, Obi Toppin has a nice dunk package. What did he do in his dunk contest appearance? Sucked. Realistically sucked. I don't see an argument for anyone other than McClung. This is McClung's event. It's going to be for the next couple of years. He is a dunker. He knows he's a dunker, and he knows that he gets invited here to put on a show. And I think that's what he's going to do.
I agree. I think he's going to win, but I'm just saying Jacob Toppin would be my sleeper pick. If anyone's not going to win other than Mac McClung, I would bet on Jacob Toppin. That's just what I'm saying. I don't see Jaime Jaquez or Jaylen Brown winning the dunk contest. Not.
How did Jaime Jaquez get
I don't know, but it's.
I've seen some reports that he beat like C.J. Stroud in a high school dunk contest and Drake London, but you're beating NFL players in dunk contests, so you get invited to the NBA.
I guess I don't know. McClung's the favorite, and rightfully so, but I'm excited to watch Jacob Toppin because I do think he has a chance to win. That's what I was trying to
I
say.
hope McClung puts on a show.
He will. He will.
Really the saving grace for the dunk contest.
He will.
It's nice to see a big name like Jaylen Brown get in it. I don't think he has much of a chance, but it's nice to see him participate despite him being the highest paid player in the league.
Yeah.
If you throw down a left-handed dunk, 50's all across the board.
Yeah, if he at least dribbles with his left hand to dunk with his right hand.
Oh, 50's
That
yeah.
yeah.
If I see a left-handed power dribble, oh my god, my mind would be blown. I don't know how I'll react. It'll be crazy.
All right, and then
Let's go to the
three-point contest.
We got 8 participants, and 3-point contest has arguably been more exciting. It's the highlight of the All-Star weekend for the past couple years. So, and this field is no different. I'm very excited to see this field. But let's hear your winner pick. Who do you got?
I was looking through this earlier today, and there was like 3 guys that I wanted to pick. And usually my strategy for picking these is picking a guy that's never won before because they usually try harder than guys that have already won this event. And that's why I'm going with Jalen Brunson to win this year's 3-point contest. This is a guy that's had a career season with the Knicks. Deserves to be on this stage. His 3-point shot is improving night in and night out. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't think he's won a 3-point contest before. So I imagine he'll come out here and try more than the guys who have already won it. So that's my pick. But I think there's like 3 or 4 guys that could realistically... I think everyone could win except for Malik Beasley. Let's just get him out of there right now. Like, this guy's not winning the 3-point contest. But I think anyone else can realistically win.
Beasley's a sharpshooter. You are sleeping.
The same guy that just complained about the Bucks offense is not calling Malik Beasley a sharpshooter, bro. Stop that. Stop that.
Sharpshooter when he's not playing the Memphis.
Stop.
You know who I'm ruling out? Trae Young. There is no way on God's green earth Trae Young is winning a 3-point contest.
Yeah, probably not. I don't think he'll get tired. I think.
But Brunson's a good pick, though. This is his first appearance in the 3-point contest, and he said earlier this week that his goal was to be better than his teammate Julius Randle, whose performance last year was abysmal. Putting it nicely.
Yeah, it was terrible.
So I think Brunson is going to do way better than Randle, and I also think he does have a very good chance of winning. So I think that's a pretty good pick from you. But I'm going with Tyrese Halliburton as my winner pick. We're going to see one of the ugliest looking jump shots be the cream of the crop in the 3-point contest, and it's going to be great.
I feel like he performed in the 3-point contest recently, and he sucked in it. Is that just me?
Yeah, he did, and he did suck. But now that he's a full-fledged superstar, things are going to be different.
Okay, that's not a terrible take. He also is playing on his home court, so that might be a little bit of an advantage too.
That is true. The All-Star Weekend is in Indianapolis, so he's going to have the hometown supporting him. They're going to be louder for his makes than they will for anyone else's, and that's not a motivational factor. I don't know what is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't hate that pick actually. I'm just his last 3-point contest appearance was not pretty. It was not good. So hopefully he does better. Yeah, you're right. Redemption. He will try a little bit harder too after his last performance, I'm guessing. So yeah, that's about it. Quick pick here. Sabrina or Steph, who's winning?
I was just about to ask you that. Give me Steph.
Yeah, I'm taking Steph.
Give me the actual Bay's finest.
I'm taking Steph.
Thompson, not being a simp. Sabrina is great, but she's not Bay's finest.
I think that Steph is going to have no nerves coming into it, and I think she's going to be really nervous, and I think that's going to be the difference. Because Sabrina has, like, everything to win, I feel like. And she doesn't have a ton to lose, because, like, if you lose in a 3-point contest to Steph, it's, you know, you lost to Steph, it's whatever. But also I feel like she's representing all female basketball players here to get the opportunity to do a 3-point contest against the greatest shooter of all time. Like, I feel like that amount of pressure is going to throw her off her game just a little bit. And I hope Steph takes it seriously enough to take advantage of that, but we'll have to watch and see.
Sabrina Ionescu, she was a dog at Oregon. I haven't really followed much of her WNBA career. I know she's on the super team New York Liberty, but I just hope she doesn't go out there and suck, because that'll be a really bad look. She in the WNBA will just get clowned relentlessly on social media. So I hope that she makes it a competition for Steph.
I agree.
She's going to go first, and I hope she makes enough to make Steph nervous.
Yeah.
Steph realizes that he has to try to beat Sabrina.
Yeah.
That's what will make it exciting. Regardless of whether Sabrina wins or loses, as long as it's a competition, it'll be a great look for her.
I agree. And if Steph is, jacking up hook shots by the third rack because he's already beaten her, that is not going to be a pretty sight on social media for the next week or so. Yeah, it's not going to be good. But yeah, those are our predictions for the All-Star events coming up tomorrow night. And with that being said, I think we'll get into the meat of today's episode, and that is our top 10 bucket getter list. How would you like to do this? Do you want to do one at a time, or do you want one of us to give our list and then one of us give the whole list and do it that way?
We'll do one at a time. It'll be easier.
All right.
For more debate.
All right, so we'll do 10 to 1, right? That's how we want to do this? All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll start. This list, in my opinion, was very difficult because everybody has a different definition of bucket getters. So I went with some guys current, some guys old, some guys retired, some guys, really just a good mix of positions, eras, and players. So at number 10, this player is currently on the Dallas Mavericks. Kyrie Irving is at number 10 for me. This guy is just a walking bucket. He can score at all three levels, knows how to get to the free throw line, knows how to finish through contact. And I feel like every season there's at least like 5 highlights of Kyrie Irving circus shots that just go in for no reason. And he's hit arguably one of the biggest shots of all time in the 2016 finals against the Warriors. So he clearly can deliver in the clutch. So I took Kyrie Irving at number 10.
Kyrie actually made my honorable mentions, so I feel like it's a great way to kick off the list. But my list, I went with a lot more modern players per se, just because of the recent offensive explosion we've had in the past decade of NBA play has resulted in a lot more buckets and a lot more bucket getters per se. So a lot of my players are more modern. I think over half are current players. Actually, exactly half are current players. But with my number 10, I went with a player who could easily rise up higher on this list. He's a current player. Kyrie Irving's running mate in Dallas, Luka Doncic. He's only played, I think this is his 6th year in the NBA, but he's already arguably the scariest player to guard in the NBA. He's most known as a score facilitating, but his scoring is out of this world. He's averaging 35 points this season, by far a career high, and he is the best isolation scorer in the NBA right now. He has everything in his bag. He controls the game at his pace. He'll play as fast or as slow as he wants to make the defense react to him, and then he has counters to every single thing the defense can throw at him. You want to press him? He can drive right by you and slow down when he gets to the paint and hit an and one at the slowest pace ever. You leave off him, he'll hit a step back 3 right in your mouth. He has everything and anything in his bag. And if you had to tell me to get a bucket, I'd already have Luka up there, and Luka could easily hit top 5 in this list in 5 years from now.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you say from 5 years from now, that was kind of the list. I wanted established scores and not necessarily guys that could make this list. But Luka, like you said,
Luka's already an established scorer.
He is an established scorer, but when I get to everybody else on this list, I think all these players all time are probably a better scorer than Luka right now. Right now.
But if you were to tell me Game 7 of the NBA Finals, 5 seconds on the clock, team down by 1, you need a bucket, Luka's up there. We've already seen him hit some.
I agree. He is up there. But some of these other guys I would take over a current version of Luka. And I like how you mentioned today's best isolation player, because that gets to my next player. Number 9 is the most recent best isolation player before Luka took that spot, and that's James Harden. There was literally a playoff series where Utah was guarding this man from behind so that he couldn't shoot step-back threes. That actually happened in an NBA playoff series. Not in a game. A full series, they tried that, and it did not work. James Harden on the Houston Rockets was one of the greatest scorers of all time. And he is probably, in my opinion, top 5 of guys that know how to get fouled. He knew exactly how to get to his spot every single time. His step-back 3, 3 years in a row was like the most unguardable thing ever. And he was able to finish around the rim, and he was also an exceptional passer, which is not part of this discussion. But James Harden was the NBA's best isolation player. I do agree with you that it's switched to Luka now. But James Harden has been doing this for a decade now. That's how good he is, and he can still get buckets with the best of them right now. So give me James Harden at 9.
James Harden's a great pick. I actually got him higher on my list than number 9. Harden is one of the best isolation scorers of all time. He was, and like you said, he was the best prior to Luka. And yes, you are right. Utah literally guarded this man from behind. Ricky Rubio stood behind this man while he was dribbling.
Yeah, I mean,
to prevent the step back. If you're resorting to guard someone, that is a bucket getter.
Yeah, like
that, man,
it was, yeah.
So we've never seen anything like it. But at my number 9, I have Tracy McGrady, and I have 4 words for you: 13 points, 33 seconds. That's really all you need to know to put McGrady on this list. In a game when he was playing with the Houston Rockets against the Spurs, the Rockets were down by 12 with 30 seconds left in the game, and McGrady, being an incredible scorer, scored 13 points with it in that last 30 seconds. It was a series of San Antonio mistakes and missed free throws that gave McGrady that opportunity. But how many players can you name that are capable of scoring 13 points in that situation? Like that's an absurd scoring load, and that's not to talk about the numerous other game winners he had in a career that was cut short by injuries. Nonetheless, if McGrady was able to avoid injuries, I firmly believe he would be a 30K scorer in his NBA career, 30K total points. He was incredible. He was Carmelo Anthony before Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah, McGrady was in my honorable mentions. I chose Kyrie over Tracy for the 10 spot because I felt like my list needed more current players. But McGrady, like you said, one of the greatest scorers of all time. That 33-second montage of him just hitting shots is one of the most ridiculous clips you'll see in NBA history. And yeah, he deserves to be on one of our lists for sure. Number 8 for me is a guy that played a long time ago. Honestly, one of the greatest three-point shooters of his era, and that is Larry Bird. My man,
Bird at 8?
I do have Bird at 8. Larry Bird, I never got to watch him play for obvious reasons. I wasn't alive back then. But from what I've seen, this guy was virtually unguardable in a game that was defensive heavy, in a game that was very physical, and he decided to go out there and give zero shits and just drop 30 on your head like it was nothing. So Larry Bird was honestly one of the first OG bucket getters in the league, in my opinion. And I feel like his era was kind of a transition period between the physical, beat you up in the paint style of basketball to the basketball that you see today. I feel like the Larry Bird, Michael Jordan transitioning to the Shaq era, that era was kind of the transition period where it was like a little bit of both. And that's why I have Larry Bird at 8.
Larry Bird on my list, but that was a really good argument. If I had to rework my list, I might put Bird at 10 instead of Doncic, because Bird was really transitioned from just the paint style basketball where they just feed the big men in the paint and have the 7-footers hit hook shots to a more team style ball movement centric offense. Because of Bird shooting before shooting was a thing. Dribbling before dribbling was a thing. Him and the Magic Johnson Showtime Lakers, first of all, they saved the NBA. Second of all, they changed how basketball is played forever. So Bird, you could definitely make an argument for top 10. My number 8, I have a guy who has picked up a narrative, and for the life of me, I cannot understand why he's received this narrative, is Steph Curry. Why Steph Curry is called an unclutch player baffles me. Throughout yes, he does not hit game-winning buzzer beaters. He hits game winners with a second left on the clock instead. Like, what's the difference? It's the exact thing. And he has hit numerous amounts of those game winners with a second left on the clock. That we could. I watched a YouTube video that was 8 minutes long of Steph Curry game winners. 8 minutes of game winners. And you're going to tell me this man isn't clutch? No, this man can score when he's crosses half court. He could anywhere on the court. You have to guard him from 50 feet out, and if you do that, he's going to drive right by you and hit a finger roll layup. If you don't do that, he'll hit a three in your grill. You can't guard that. He's become one of the most unguardable players in history just because of how greatest shooter of all time. Speaks for itself.
Yeah. Obviously, my favorite player of all time. There's not much to say here. At number 7, I also have Steph Curry. So I feel like I don't have to explain myself. Greatest shooter of all time should probably be on this list. And like you said, there's even points in time where you might need to guard him further than half court. There are instances where this man makes 3/4 court shots at the end of quarters. And the one thing that I've argued for Steph for years about the unclutch thing is he's too busy beating you in the third quarter that he doesn't need to hit a buzzer beater in the fourth quarter to win. There are some players and some teams that just destroy you and don't put themselves in positions to hit a game winner, once a week, like some of the more mediocre teams that are in more close games. I think that has something to do with it. And yeah, in the 2022 finals, I mean, Steph was the best player on the court, and it really wasn't close. He was very clutch in that series, and I think that kind of solidified his legacy as, in my opinion, the greatest point guard of all time. So I have Steph at 7.
And about Steph this year, while the Warriors have been mediocre this year and are in a lot more close games, Steph leads the league in clutch time scoring. And he's not clutch, apparently. So does that mean no one else in the league is clutch? I don't even know.
Clutch isn't a thing anymore. It's just not a thing anymore.
It can't be. If Steph isn't clutch, no one is. But at number 7, I'm with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. If you were the all-time scoring leader in the NBA for 40 years, you're a bucket getter. His skyhook is still one of the most iconic, signature, and unstoppable moves in NBA history. He put up 38,000 points in his career, mostly from that shot, and yet no one can defend it. If we were talking bucket getter, if we were saying I need a bucket to win a game, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar skyhook, hell, I could bring up 70-year-old Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I'd still rather him shoot a skyhook than half the players currently in the NBA. I think I would call that a good shot.
Yeah. So we were talking before this that we would each have a player on our list that we regret not having on there. And I think Kareem is my guy because I like your argument about if you're the all-time leading scorer, you should probably be on here, which I agree with. The skyhook is an iconic shot that Kareem made unguardable, really. And that's probably the one guy I wish I had on my list. I probably would take Kyrie off and slide some people down, but I like Kareem on this list. I wish I'd put him on mine. I don't hate that. All right, number 6, I have Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony, you were already talking about Tracy McGrady earlier, is basically a better version of Tracy McGrady in his prime. Knicks Carmelo Anthony literally could hit any shot on any defender at any point in time. This man was hitting he would not even dribble. He'd catch the ball in the post and face up. He'd jab step 3 times and then just shoot over a guy his height or taller, and it would go in every time. I mean, this guy could hit a shot from any spot on the court. He was one of the best scorers of all time. I know he's top 10 in scoring all time. So the points speak for himself. His later career, he was more of a sharp-shooting 3-point guy as opposed to a bucket getter. But in his prime, I mean, Carmelo Anthony was arguably the best scorer in the league in his prime.
I don't think Melo was a better version of Tracy McGrady. I think Melo was a healthy version of Tracy McGrady. And I actually left Melo off my list. And here's why. He, despite all of his scoring accolades, yes, he's a top 10 scorer in NBA history. Yes, his jab step mid-range shot was lethal. But he had 0 playoff success. He didn't even make a conference finals throughout his career. Luka did that in his 3rd year. If you're going to tell me a game is on the line, this is a meaningful game, an impactful game, Game 7, game for my life. If I win, I survive. If I lose, I die. I don't want to pick a guy who has not even made a conference finals. That's why I left Melo off my list. It's just the lack of he doesn't show up in big huge games. At my number 6, I have the guy who popularized street ball, Allen Iverson, AI. His run in 2001 is what I remember when I'm talking about bucket getters. Allen Iverson took a depleted Sixers team to the NBA Finals, where he proceeded to score 41 against the Kobe and Shaq Lakers in Game 1, complete with his iconic picture of him stepping over Tyronn Lue. He popularized handles existed in the game before AI, but he popularized them. He prioritized them. He made them part of he made them routine, and he still made them exceptional. I mean, he crossed a Michael Jordan in his rookie year. That's one of the most iconic crossovers in NBA history. And just throughout his career, he was Kyrie before Kyrie, and with success as a number one option. And that's the one thing Kyrie's missing throughout his career, honestly. Success as a number one option. AI had that. He had his playoff run with the Sixers that he dragged him to the finals is arguably one of the best of all time.
Yeah, I agree. At number 5, I have AI for all the reasons you just mentioned. He literally has a crossover named after him, so that should tell you all you need to know about how lethal this dude was when he had the basketball in his hands. And that finals run you're talking about, I mean, talk about a backpack, dude. I mean, this guy had every move you could possibly imagine, and then he made his own moves when you tried to stop, everything you thought you knew about him. This guy was insane. I honestly wish he played in today's NBA because I think he's one of the players from his era that could translate to this game very well with his offensive style that he played with. I think he would be a fantastic fit in today's era of basketball. And one more thing, back to the Carmelo debate that we just had. When you talk about team success is a lot more than just who your number one player is. A lot more factors go into it, like who you're playing against, your teammates, who's healthy, who's not healthy, coaching, all that. So when I made this list about bucket getters, I didn't really think about that because the level of competition that Carmelo faced in the playoffs, I feel like was a little bit harder per se than some of the competition the guys today are facing. Like I know Carmelo in his era was playing against LeBron James in the Heat, and he was playing against Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce in the Celtics. Both of those teams would probably be the best team in the Eastern Conference right now. And maybe so that's just my thought process on that about team success. I think it's unfair to judge Carmelo on his team success when he was going up against those two teams every year in the playoffs.
I agree with that to an extent. The reason it's an extent is because every other player I have on my list has had a deep playoff run. Even Doncic, who's only been in the league for 6 years, carried his team to the Western Conference Finals due to her scoring load and clutch ability. Melo never had that run, and that's why I left him off. That was the sole reason.
Yeah, and to me, like the question is, in the fourth quarter, if I need one bucket, I don't need him to win a best-of-7 series. I need one bucket. I think I'm going to take Carmelo Anthony over Luka Doncic. That's just me, though.
I would take Luka, but we'll agree to disagree on that. I'm at number 5. I have LeBron James, the current all-time scoring leader in NBA history. And just you might say that's a little low for the all-time scoring leader in NBA history. But LeBron, first of all, is also an incredible facilitator and oftentimes prioritizes that over scoring. If I need a bucket and the guy passes the ball, that ain't a bucket. That's an assist, which is phenomenal, but not a bucket. Secondly, LeBron doesn't have much of a bag. Yes, he has a bag, and it is a top 20 bag. But compared to the guys on this list, he uses physicality a lot more to drive into the paint, to draw contact, get fouls, finish through contact. And that's not a knock on that. I mean, 2 points is 2 points no matter how you score it. But if I picture a bucket getter, I'm picturing a guy who's hitting fades, mid-range fades, pull-up threes off the dribble. Not guys who drive and slash to the paint and draw contact. Number 5 on the all-time bucket getters list is no slouch. That's phenomenal. But I think there are 4 guys who I would rather trust to get a bucket in a clutch situation than LeBron James.
Wow. Okay, I'll get to LeBron later because he's on my list. Little spoiler, a little bit higher than 5, but the top 4 for me literally could have gone in any order imaginable. And I went with this order based off thinking if I were to choose one of them, who would I choose? So at number 4, rounding off my top 4, I'll take Kevin Durant. And KD, very similar to every other guy I've mentioned so far, literally can hit any shot ever imaginable, ever created on any defender you put against him. He could do it off the dribble. He could do it off the catch. He could do it literally any way possible when he's getting fouled. He's an amazing free throw shooter, which I think is one of the most important things of being a bucket getter. You got to be able to make your free throws. And Kevin Durant, game on the line, like he could chuck up a fadeaway 3 from the logo. There's a good chance that's going in for game. Kevin Durant has hit his fair share of big shots in his career. And yeah, I mean, this guy's 7 feet with a handle and a pull-up jump shot. Like, that's just not something that should be happening in the NBA. And a lot of guys called him skinny and he wouldn't be able to finish, in the paint. I think he's a really good finisher around the rim. He always has been. And yeah, he can beat you off the dribble, off the catch, 3-pointer, mid-range, at the paint. He's a cheat code. He's actually a cheat code. There's nobody that can guard Kevin Durant, and that's why I have him in my top 4.
Durant's also in my top 4. He's not at number 4 because instead I have James Harden, who we talked about originally. When I imagine prime James Harden, I imagine Ricky Rubio guarding him from behind. The clip of the Utah Jazz that you were talking about earlier. And if you're doing that, because that's the only way that you're able to take away a player's scoring ability, or at least a player's shooting ability, that is absurd. We have never seen that before. I don't know if we'll ever see it again. Prime James Harden is truly one of the greatest isolation scorers, if not the greatest isolation scorer in NBA history. And for that, he's number 4 on my list.
Interesting. Okay. All right, number 3, rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. Like I said, the top 4 could have gone in any order. I took Kobe because game on the line, I feel like his shot selection at times is not better than the 2 guys I have above him, and that's why he falls at 3. However, Kobe Bryant is a better version of Kevin Durant, in my opinion, when it comes to getting buckets. They're very similar players. Not similar build, but the way they played the game, in my opinion, was very similar. They could score from any spot on the court. And Kobe had a mentality of nobody in the league can guard me at any point in time. And I think that is something that separates him from everybody below him on this list. And that is why I have him at 3. Yeah.
I also have Kobe Bryant at 3, so I mean, there's not much I can say other than 81 points. Scored 81 points in an NBA game in 06 too, when the league was a lot more defensive centric. 81 points in a game, still unrivaled to this day. The only player that has gotten within 10 of that is Luka. His mentality to score constantly, his mentality that no one is better than me, no one can guard me, is what drove him to a success. And he could take a contested 3-point shot while he's being surrounded by 3 defenders, and I would still think it's going in. That's how confident Kobe was in himself, and how confident he made everyone else around in him. He just had that it factor. And game on the line, there are very, very few players I would rather take the final shot than Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's top 3 on our list for a reason, and I'm just going to move on quickly to number 2, LeBron James. You already talked about him, the number 1 leading scorer of all time. Can also score at 3 levels, has hit his fair share of clutch shots, and he is an absolute menace in transition. There's literally nothing you can do to stop this man from scoring in transition. And I feel like his passing ability aided him a lot in his ability to score because guys weren't able to help off their man to guard LeBron because they knew that he would be able to find them. And I think that's an underrated part of his offensive game, has always been his passing. Everybody always talks about how athletic he is and how much of a great winner he is, but LeBron's passing, in my opinion, is the reason he's such a good scorer, is because he's able to force other defenders to stay home, or else he's just going to hit his teammates with perfect passes. So yeah, LeBron at number 2, all-time leading scorer, still getting it done at age 39, which is just ridiculous. There's like nobody in the league that can guard him at 39, which just baffles me. Like, the dude's balding and he's dropping 35 points a night. Like, it's insane.
He's got gray hair in his beard. It's
Yeah,
still
I mean,
destroying everyone in the league.
yeah.
I have no complaints with LeBron at 2. I know I put him lower on my list, but that was just personally how I view a bucket, as more skill-based rather than athleticism-based, and that's what LeBron scores most of his points on. But it's not like he can't score. I mean, he's a 3-level scorer. He's shooting his career high from three-point range this year, which is absurd as a 39-year-old. But he has back throughout his career. He hits game winners, and I have no complaints with being at number 2. But at my number 2, I have Kevin Durant. You mentioned him earlier, 3-level scorer, has a handle, and he has all of this at 7 feet tall. Like, what do you even do at the defense?
Nothing.
Like, you could. There's things you can do. If you're tall enough to contest a shot, you won't be quick enough to defend him off the dribble. If you're quick enough to defend him off the dribble, he's pulling up from 3 over your head, and there's nothing you can do about it except pray that he misses. That is literally unguardable. Now, he's number 2 on my list. I have one player higher than him. But if we were doing a top 10 list of most unguardable players, Kevin Durant might be number 1 on that.
Yeah, I mean, I already mentioned my top 4. LeBron, Kobe, KD, and the guy I'm about to talk about are literally interchangeable for me. Like, you could literally give me that 4, and I'm just going to, pick a random number between 1 through 4, and that's who I'm sending out in the court. Like, all these guys are capable of taking the game-winning shot of any game ever. Really, any guy on this list is capable of that, but these 4 in particular, at any stage, any shot, any scenario, I'm taking these 4 guys for sure. And number 1, I think it's pretty obvious. I'm going to go with the GOAT, Michael Jordan. There's literally not a person I would want more to take the game-winning shot for my team ever, all time, than Michael Jordan. I mean, I don't really need to explain that one.
Yeah, I also have Jordan number 1. Jordan, in an era that was the 80s, the most physical era of basketball, was the first player to normalize having 30 points per game seasons. He won 10 scoring titles throughout his career, which is by far and away the most in NBA history. He's hit numerous game winners, including the Game 6 winner over in the Utah Jazz in the finals. In fact, he's such a clutch scorer that there's a stat line for how many game winners he's missed. That's used to encourage people to don't give up.
Yeah.
Like that is scoring on a different level. I know exactly how many game winners he's missed throughout his career because I've heard this saying so many times. But it's 23. He's missed 23 game winners.
Yeah.
But Michael Jordan, in an era that was physical and defensive, was the first offensive player whose offense transcended anything the defense could do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Maybe you throw Wilt in there, but that was in an era against plumbers.
Yeah.
MJ was going against actual basketball players, actual NBA hoopers, and dropping 30 points a game like it was nothing.
Yeah, and
number 1 on my list.
Yeah.
And if my life was on the line, there is no one else I would want shooting.
Then Michael Jordan. Yeah, then Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some honorable mentions, guys that I wanted to add, but I just didn't have room for. 1 is Dirk Nowitzki, absolute bucket getter. I wish I could add Dirk on this list, but I didn't. And there's one more that I'm not thinking of. I know you mentioned Kareem, but he wasn't who I'm thinking of. There's one more, but McGrady. I wanted to add McGrady, but he also didn't fit into my list. Dirk and McGrady were my 2 honorable mentions, and then Kareem is a guy I wish I had on my list, but yeah, I
had 3 honorable mentions. 1, you mentioned Bird earlier. I wish I honestly would have put him at 10 instead of Doncic if I could go back and change that. 2 was also Dirk. The one-legged fadeaway was his signature shot, and there wasn't really much the defense could do about that. And 3, complete dark horse, is named completely out of left field, DeMar DeRozan. Because it's mid-range, he doesn't miss.
Yeah.
He doesn't miss. If he gets within 16 feet of the paint, just give up. It's a bucket.
Yeah. If you had added DeRozan and then talked about how Carmelo Anthony didn't have playoff success, I would have been mad at you, but you didn't. So I appreciate you being consistent. I appreciate that.
Hey, it's a name out of left field. I mean, he's an honorable mention just because he's an honorable mention to the honorable mentions, honestly.
Yeah.
I would obviously rather have Melo over DeRozan if it came down to it. But no one really thinks of DeRozan as a phenomenal scorer, when really he is. He's very difficult to defend. He's incredibly athletic, has a lockdown mid-range shot. I'd say he's a top.
All right. Before we sign off, I have a question that I want to ask you, and I'm very interested. Of the 10 players that made your list, who do you think you would have the best chance guarding in a 1v1?
Can I say the next question?
No. I want you to answer that question. Who do you think you would match up the best with in a 1v1?
I'm 6'3". So anyone above 6'6", I think we can automatically.
Yep,
that. Get a hand shot.
That's
So
fair.
that leaves Allen Iverson and Steph Curry and James Harden. Except James Harden's exactly 6'6", so I think take him up too. So out of AI and Curry, I think probably Curry. Maybe I think lucky contest stuff. I don't even know. Maybe
A lucky contest against the greatest shooter of all time.
Okay, maybe take our matchup as a joke and take 40-footers the entire game. Will he make every 40-footer? There's a chance. But if he misses one, that's a massive win, because I don't think any other player on this list is missing a single shot with me as a defender.
Yeah, I think of my 10 players, the best player I would have a chance of guarding is also Steph. And I think it's because I've watched him for so long that I think I would let him shoot as opposed to driving by me like all these other people could do. I also I don't know how tall Larry Bird was, but I feel like I'm 6'1".
6'8".
Oh, okay, forget that. Bird would cook me. Just put me in the post. I'm cooked. At 6'1", I'm so cooked. So yeah, probably.
Bird would get pissed because you're white. He would school you. He got pissed at an opposing coach in an NBA game once because they put a white guy on him and felt disrespected. So he dropped 40 on his head and cursed the coach out the entire game.
Yeah, I mean,
the number 10 spot on my list. I'm sorry, Larry Bird.
Yeah, but yeah, I think Steph is the right answer because there's a chance he misses a 35-footer. But also, like, if Steph wanted to,
A slim chance.
he could dribble between my legs, step back, and I'm touching earth. Perfect swoosh 3. Like, his handle's also ridiculously good too. So if he just doesn't shoot, then I'm screwed. But I think Steph probably is the best chance. But yeah, I don't think I'm stopping any one of those people from scoring.
At LFP, you pull that exact move on Ethan Van Winsberg. Step back for 3.
I know.
That is a core memory because he legit fell to the ground, and I've never witnessed cross him like that in real life. Push off.
That is honestly, now that you mention that, if there's one shot in my entire life playing basketball that I wish I made, that might be it. I'd probably have to think more about that, but it was a disgusting move to miss the shot. It was
A core memory of mine was you crossing the fuck.
It was, oh god. Yeah.
We'll wrap up this episode of the Hoopers Lounge. Comment your top 10 bucket getters, whether you agree with mine or Max's list more. If there's anyone that we might have missed. And yeah, tune in for next week. We'll have All-Star game results and discuss that. And yeah, we'll see what happens within the next week of NBA.
Yeah, we'll see you guys then.
Peace out.
Peace.